then switch and go to the Thursday live session. And those who were in the session in Springfield or normal, I guess, can go to Chicago. So we can mix and match those. Anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to cover the basics of motivational interviewing, including the philosophy and the overview of how people make change, because the entire purpose of motivational interviewing is to help people to make change. So implemented skillfully, motivational interviewing can increase the program's effectiveness, and it really fits hand in glove with the customer journey mapping that we did at the live session, because it totally takes a customer participant focus. So we're going to go over the philosophy, the overview today, and I will give you information about how people make change. But then in the next three sessions, we're going to examine the very specific motivational interviewing skills that a professional would use with participants in order to gain trust and work effectively together. So it basically, motivational interviewing is a philosophy and a set of skills. It takes just a little bit of time to learn, but honestly, it takes years to master. What I've tried to do is really to simplify the concepts so that we can incorporate them into just like daily routines in working with people, whether or not that's participants, coworkers, subordinates, spouses, children, or really whoever you interact with. So the thing that I see in my years of experience in working in workforce programs is that there are some issues in recruitment, assessment, and case management that end up costing us, oftentimes in terms of performance. One, participants don't feel comfortable and revealing really important information to us. And so sometimes they withhold something that would have been really useful information earlier on because we could have planned around it. But if the trust hasn't been developed, they're not going to reveal. Sometimes I found in my experience, and then definitely my experience in consulting, is that participants sometimes just treat us like we're a bank, and they only make contact with us when they want to like make a withdrawal. They want like a bus pass or gas or a reimbursement for childcare or whatever is the supportive service that is being provided. So that becomes problematic because we want to build a plan and have a relationship. And if they're only calling me when they want money, then we've kind of set up the wrong dynamic. Also, another thing that I see oftentimes, and this is not a complete list, but participants oftentimes haven't really thought through the implication of some of the choices that they want to make. So, like as an example, and I heard this when I was on site, like people who want to go into truck driving because they think that they're going to make $120,000 a year, and that's already not true, but they haven't really thought through. You're going to spend all of your time on the road. You're never going to be home. If you have family and you have children, you're not going to see them. Like, have you thought all of that through? And then, and sometimes and we did definitely talk about this, assessments and interactions kind of tend to be transactional rather than relationship, because of some of the forms in the process. So here's what I think that we're initially trying to accomplish with our participants. First of all, we're trying to get them to see the whole breadth of our services. And we definitely talked about this in terms of like orientation, giving them an overview, because the only way that they can help to make choices is if they're really clear on the services that we offer, so that they can help decide whether or not a particular service matches their needs. We're trying to help them gather information so they'll make the best decision possible. We're trying to help them to consider what occupations pay well. I would have youth who wanted to go into childcare, Meanwhile, this youth already had, my youth were 16 to 21, but already had two kids. And by the time they got out, they were going to end up in a job that didn't pay enough to be able to support them and their two kids. And so, sometimes people pick a thing because they think they might like that thing, but they haven't really figured out whether or not they could live doing that. So, and then part of what we're trying to accomplish is identifying what challenges they have, setting a foundation for just the ongoing case management, because I mean, some participants we're with a year, sometimes more, obviously sometimes less. So we're trying to build that long-term relationship. So essentially through the program, what we're doing is we are asking people to think about their future and to make changes in their life. So my question, and I want you to think about is, and you can use chat, and I'm going to make sure that I can read chat. Yeah, not seeing that. So I'm going to have somebody read it out loud to me. But think about what kinds of changes like we're trying to get participants to make in their lives. Like, in order to be successful, what kind of things do you want your participants to change? And if you could type those into chat, I will need Kirsten or someone to read them because chat is not coming up on my screen. Oh, here it is. Now I can see it. It just came up.
Routines is what people are saying.
Yeah, now I can see it.
Routines, attitude, communication, time management.
Routines, attitude, yep. Having a routine, lots of time management ones. Okay. Anything else?
People also have the ability to unmute, Jody.
Okay. So to be dependable, and I think sometimes it's what we're asking so much, the reality of their career choice and being reliable, being more organized, tailoring their unrealistic expectations. People who come in, they wear glasses, they want to be a pilot. It's not going to happen. You have a criminal background, you're not going to work in TSA. That's unrealistic. That they can achieve, and we aren't doing all the work. And so, what we want to do is walk beside them. They obviously are the ones who have to do the work. And you're right, Ronnie, executive function skills, which include, getting along with others, communication skills, a lot of those kind of soft skills. So, yeah. And so I think, like, from my own perspective, I think that although when we're working with participants, like, it seems apparent that making some changes in their life would benefit them. But sometimes it's totally like pulling teeth to get them to change. So, one way to help people to make changes is through motivational interviewing. So, let's talk about that for a moment. I'll define it. Yeah, they definitely are needing family support as well. And sometimes what it means is, to be quite honest, some of the youth I served, they need to change friends. They had friends that were like pulling them away from being successful, like wanting them to stay out late. These were youth, making them think that it was okay to just decide, I don't want to go to work today and no show. Like they really like the support system that they did have sometimes was not the support system that I wish that they had. So what is motivational interviewing? Let's define it. And then what we can do is drill it down. So this is a textbook definition of it's a participant-centered directive method of enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring and resolving ambivalence. So, what motivational interviewing does is just tackles the whole skill of how to talk to participants to help them to discover their own motivation. It's collaborative, meaning that we're in this conversation together. Somebody said we're like walking beside each other. I'm not walking in front of you, and I'm definitely not walking behind you. But it never involves telling people what to do or why they should do it. Instead, motivational interviewing always guides participants to identify their own reasons for making change. So William Miller and Stephen Rolnick are really the fathers of motivational interviewing. I have a picture of the textbook that is up on the screen. It's available on Amazon if you want to read more about it. But I will warn you, it is not written in workforce language. So you have to translate pretty extensively to read it. It has a lot of examples, but they're mostly drug, alcohol, addiction based. And so what I've tried to do is translate it all into workforce language. So I tried to do that for you. So this definition is very academic. And what I want to show you is what I think is a more simplified, usable definition. And that is, it's just helping people to talk themselves into changing. So, motivational interviewing uses the psychological law. It's like Psychology 101. I learn what I believe as I hear myself speak. So, we've all experienced this. Like maybe you're ambivalent about a decision that you have to make. And that ambivalence means that you're holding two opposing thoughts in your head simultaneously. Like, I want to take some classes, and I don't really want to take some classes right now. Maybe I want to quit smoking. I don't know if I really want to quit smoking right now. I want to buy a new car, but at the same time, I don't really want to buy a new car. I don't want the car payments. I don't want, I just, I don't want that additional expense. That's where you're having two opposing thoughts in your head at the same time. And that is called ambivalence. And so typically what happens to people is they can argue either side of that ambivalence, that decision, and feel equally strong about both. And this is where many of our participants are when they think about a variety of things. When they think about going to school, do I want to? Don't I want to? Do I want to go to work? Would I rather go to school? Which job to take? Should I take the, I don't know, Office Depot? I recently, I was working with a program and somebody had gone all the way through like a nursing, medical assistant, CNA, I can't remember what the job was program. But she was applying to jobs in the medical field, but then she got offered a job at Home Depot, and the Home Depot job actually paid $1.50 more an hour than she was going to make in the medical field. And that was a big decision point for her. It's like, I just invested all this time in school, but this job pays better. And so that she had a lot of ambivalence about that particular decision. So it's oftentimes what happens is, people want something and they don't want it at the same time. So they see the pros, they see the cons, but they're, they just haven't arrived at which way to go. And so, yeah, I want you to think about that for a moment. When you feel two ways about a thing, it's beneficial to talk to someone, because not to have this other person make up your mind for you, but to listen to you, because you can argue both sides. You can argue, I want to buy a car, I don't want to buy a car, I want to change jobs, I want to stay in this job, I want to get married, I don't want to get married, whatever it is. For me right now, to retire, to not retire, join a gym, not join a gym. But somehow you discover how you feel as you talk about it. Thus, like you hear yourself. And so what happens is people, it goes back to this adage, I learn what I believe as I hear myself speak. So no one else can tell you what to do. You have to get there on your own. So uncertainty and ambivalence, when we experience that with our participants, it's not a problem. It is just all part of the process in terms of deciding what action to take. And if we treat them, we don't want to treat that as a problem. We want to we just want to treat that as a process that we have to go through, and hopefully we come out on the other side. So part of the coaching is just allowing people to talk and explore how they feel. The participant should be the one voicing the arguments for change, not us, because people have to talk themselves into changing. We really can't dictate it. What motivational interviewing does is sets the climate for us to be able to do that. So, show you one other famous individual, Blaise Pascal. And this, I just want you to see, was like 500 years ago. He was a mathematician and a philosopher, and he observed that people are generally better persuaded by reasons which they themselves have discovered than by those that have come into the minds of others. And so, going back to the last slide in a bit, is that when you feel ambivalent about a decision, I want to join a gym, I don't want to join a gym, and you talk to someone about that decision, you will argue harder for the opposite side if someone pushes one side too hard. So it makes people dig in their heels and sometimes make the opposite decision to the one that you would have recommended. Although we're not recommending decisions to people, we're helping people to decide for themselves. But so people are better persuaded by things that they discover for themselves. Again, psychology 101. If I have an idea myself and I feel like I can claim ownership over that idea, as opposed to somebody else talking me into that, then I'm going to be much more committed and much more motivated by that particular decision. So, motivational interviewing, sort of just a few quick points before we get into some of the details of it, is that motivational interviewing is evidence-based. It has been researched and it is effective. Where they've done clinical trials, demonstration, one person gets traditional counseling, another person gets motivational interviewing. But much of the research, which is why the book that I showed you was written in this way, has been in the addiction field, drug, alcohol, tobacco. However, it has also been studied as a method for reducing risky behaviors and increasing participant engagement. Most recently, TANF programs, Health and Human Services, welfare, and workforce programs have participated in demonstration projects through Mathematica, MDRC, which are nationwide social policy research firms, and they've conducted studies to see, do case managers who use these techniques have higher success rate with their participants, and the results are positive. Next, which I think is beautiful, is that motivational interviewing is effective in brief encounters, like the kind that we have with participants, or like brief encounters have impact. You don't have to go through years of traditional therapy in order to have some kind of breakthrough. Motivational interviewing is successful with short time, short number of months of interaction with our participants. And then the last point, and I'll keep beating this over the next 4 sessions that we have together, It actively involves people in their own care because an essential characteristic of motivational interviewing is that, again, the practitioner never decides for the participant. The participant is always going to be in that driver's seat. So let me show you the spirit. Spirit of motivational interviewing. It's like, I think it's important to kind of understand that because you can mimic when we next webinar, the next three, you can mimic the techniques without understanding sort of the overall context. So it's just motivational interviewing is a way of being with people. In motivational interviewing, the participant, no matter what level they come in at, they are the expert. And what they're expert on is that nobody knows more about their situation, their values, their goals, their concerns, their skills than the participant themselves. So no one is better in a better position to anticipate like how a change is going to impact them than they would be. So that's why it means that we do need to collaborate. It's a partnership. It honors their expertise and their perspective. So what we're trying to do is, again, create that atmosphere. So the motivation to change is always presumed to reside within the participant, within the individual. Like what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you here in a bit how you do this, is we're going to try to evoke change talk, get them to talk about change. The more somebody, I'll come back and I'll probably repeat this, the more somebody talks about making a change in their life, the more likely they are to make it. So my goal is to get them to talk about making these change and to think about how making this change will be helpful to them. And so sometimes it's just reframing our questions, reframing how we describe the program so that they sell themselves on this course of action. So we're going to practice compassion, acceptance, partnership, empathy, all of that. Let me show you the reverse. I talked about this probably a little bit more when I was in Normal than I did in Chicago area. Is that sometimes I'll hear a case manager say, sometimes we just got to tell them the way it is. And that's the opposite of motivational interviewing. We never tell people how it is because I don't know how things are for an individual participant because they're an expert on their own. But this is the opposite. This is authoritarian or or paternalistic therapeutic style. And that's where we're more likely to confront a participant, like sort of impose awareness on them. And an example I think I use it in the training is to say to somebody, well, because you don't have a high school diploma, you are going to have to work a lot harder in order to be able to find a job. Or it's going to take longer for you to get a job because of your involvement in the legal system or the justice system. So this is where you're trying to impose this awareness and acceptance of this reality. Also, paternalistic, authoritative is when what we do is we presume that a person just lacks knowledge, insight, or any kind of skills. So what we're trying always to do is provide enlightenment, provide this knowledge. And then authority, the staff tells the participant what they need to do, what they should do, how they should handle. So this is the opposite of motivational interviewing. And what I want you to just see with this is it actually creates an imbalance in terms of power and control. The coach in this case is acting like the authority. And even sometimes threats are involved. That happens a lot in the welfare side where it's like, if you don't do this, we're going to do this. And so, that's a threat. So I just want you to see the approach is as different as night and day and is going to produce different results. The approach on this slide will build resistance. And so I want to drill that down just a bit. The process and the case manager themselves will influence client motivation. So the attitude and the skill of the coach who is listening to the participant and interacting will have considerable influence, and that can be positive and that can be negative. And you see that in programs. I think I did talk about that in at least one of the training. Staff working in the same site, in the same setting, working with the same participants, offering the same services, will oftentimes see dramatic differences in terms of their rate of success. And how many people that they've got to re-engage, how many people make it through. It's because a counselor's effectiveness can vary dramatically. So if a counselor is in this upper arrow, they're affirming, they're compassionate, they're accepting, they're empowering, they emphasize choice all the time. They always are drawing out the participant's view of a thing. Those people tend to bring out higher levels of change talk. And relatively low levels of resistance. People don't resist when you're empowering them, asking them their opinion. They feel that someone is empathizing with them. Counselors that have the lower arrows, draw conclusions, pressure people to make choices, rushes people by saying, look, we got to, I only have an hour and we got to wrap this up. If I feel like I'm judged, and we talked about that just in terms of being called a dropout, an ex-offender, homeless, any of those kind of things, I feel like I'm being judged. Or somebody over advises, tells me what to do, what I should do, and it just seems uninterested in my own perspective, then that is associated with high levels of resistance and relatively low levels of change talk. People aren't going to talk about changing. They don't need to, because the counselor is kind of prescribing everything. And so then you're going to have poorer outcomes. So what we want to do is be on the upper arrow, because that represents the spirit, a lot of the spirit of motivational interviewing. The bottom arrow is paternalistic, is more authoritarian, authoritative. So the bottom doesn't build relationships. It's more likely to destroy them. I want to show you a few ways that people do resist, and so that you'll know it, you can recognize it. And so this is what motivational interviewing, I guess, is not. These strategies like criticizing, name calling, diagnosing, and praising evaluatively are just different forms of judging a person. And when I feel judged, in real life, when I feel judged, I become resistant. So these 12 things are called roadblocks, because they block, they stop, they divert, they change the conversation's direction. They tend to imply, again, this uneven relationship. The underlying message is sort of listen to me because I know best. So ordering, threatening, moralizing. Moralizing is should. Here's what you should do. Here's what you shouldn't do. What I think you should do, that's all moralizing. Excessive questioning, where I feel like I'm being interrogated, not open-ended, tell me your story type questions, but like asking one closed question after another. And I feel like I'm in like a, I don't know, interrogation room in the police department. Or somebody who takes charge. Taking charge could be, let me call this child care center and I'll find out whether or not they have a slot. And so I've taken charge of the problem. That's all in this sending solutions category. And the last one is avoiding others' concern, is where we divert the conversation. We try to make logical arguments without hearing like what they're feeling, what they're thinking, or we're reassuring people where reassuring. I know that sounds like that would be a good thing, but it's not. Like I'll give you an example, and I don't know why this one's coming to my mother or to my mind, but like when my mother died, people would try to reassure me. They go, well, in time, you'll be able to move past it. It's like, you have no idea what I'm thinking, how I feel. And so the reassurance seems fake. diverting, you guys all are probably somewhat familiar with, like you would go home from school. I don't know. It certainly was my parents, and I'd say, "Oh my gosh, it was so cold, and I had to stand at the stand at the bus stop, and the bus was late, and I was just freezing out there, blah blah blah." And my mother and dad would say, "Wow, when I was your age, I had to walk to school both ways up hills. I didn't even have any shoes." And they tell you the story. I want you to notice that what they've just done is divert the argument. They're no longer talking about me and how I felt. They're telling me their story. That is diverting. So, what we want to do, some of these are a little worse than others, but what we basically want to do is avoid them all. And why we want to avoid them is because this is the general reaction from people when they hit these roadblocks, somebody judging, any of that kind of stuff. It creates emotions, and those emotions are anger, helplessness, overwhelmed, like I feel with shame, I'm embarrassed. Notice the second to the last one, they just don't come back. They avoid interacting. So I think that there's just in our system, it's like motivation is oftentimes considered to be a client trait, trait of the participant, rather than sometimes it's a reaction to the counselor's style. So sometimes it's us. Like I definitely said this in one of the trainings. I can't change participants. The only thing I can do is change myself in terms of how I interact with them. So by telling people what to do, these are the kind of behaviors. And so it's not even that they don't want to do a certain thing. It's just they don't like to feel told. So I see that Ronnie has said something. I'm going to quick read that in chat. Um, Parents sometimes want their child to work more than the student does. I think that what I have to do is stop the parent there and say, I'm really glad to hear your ideas and what you think. What I'd really like to do is hear a little bit more from Sheila and find out, what does Sheila think? Like you're going to have to open that up, because bottom line is, if we don't get Sheila on board, you're not going to, the youth is only doing it because their parents making them, and they're not going to commit. And that's the weird thing to me, is that sometimes it's the very thing the person wants. Like I would have youth, if I said, well, you need to get your GED, they could have walked in my program and already thought, I'm coming here because I want to get my GED. But as soon as I say you need to get your GED, now they don't want it. They get resistant. So what I've got to do is, again, is I turn that around so I can make it their idea. So if I've got parents, that's part of, I think, the case manager, the skills is to get the parent to, what do I want to say? To get the parent in a situation where they allow their child to express what the child's hopes, fears, dreams, thoughts are, because ultimately they're going to have to, they're going to be the one who has to implement the plan. So here's what I want you to do. And then look at this, and I want you to think of this example and how this applies to you, because I think then it becomes pretty clear. Think about a behavior that you want to change, something that you want to do, whatever, go to the gym, quit smoking, lose weight, eat healthier, cut sugar out of your diet, call your friends more, be more supportive of your spouse or your children. Just like think of anything that you would like to change about yourself. And actually, where you can really think about those things, I think, is like go back to changes that, like, sometimes we make on New Year's Eve. Oh, here's my New Year's resolutions, all of those kind of things. Now, I want you to imagine that you're discussing this change that you want to make with your doctor, if it's health wise, a friend, your spouse. And their response is, they tell you why you should change or why you should do this thing. They tell you the importance of making this change, why you should do this thing. They tell you how you should go about making the change. So they give you a strategy and they tell you what they would do if they were you. So that is one approach. That's I'm going to call the A approach. Let's look at the B approach. Imagine instead that the person, their reaction when you tell them this thing that you want to change, they ask you why you even want to make this change. What made you decide, like at this point, that I don't know, you want to cut sugar out of your diet, you want to quit smoking, you want to take some classes, me at the senior center. What's like, what prompted this? Then they ask you, how long have you been thinking about this? I mean, is this something that you're just thinking about now, or have you been thinking about this for some period of time? They ask you, like, if you decided that you wanted to make this change, how would you go about succeeding? Like, what kind of things might you do? What's worked for you before when you wanted to make a change? And then they ask you, what challenges that you might face if you were to do this thing. Mine with going to the senior center is it's like the classes are at like 8 in the morning, and sometimes I just don't feel like being up and exercising or like being attentive that quite that early. So that would be a challenge. And then what steps have you already taken? So what I want you to just think about for you is which of these would be more effective for you, A or B, if it were you making the change? Are you more likely, you can put it in chat, A or B, what works? Are you more likely to do something if somebody tells you exactly what you to do, or whether or not it's all your idea? And I am seeing most people are on the B side. The B side is motivational interviewing. Because we're doing it not because somebody else, what this other person is doing, this friend, the doctor, the spouse, is just listening to us and then asking us the questions that help us come to our own conclusion in terms of what we want to do. What I want to point out, the B approach builds rapport. And it gets participants to come up with their own ideas. It empowers them to make their own decisions. And notice it helps them think through their choices. And it helps them think through their choices because we're asking what challenges would you face? Well, what's worked for you before? What kinds of things have you thought about? So it might not sound like it, but for a lot of case managers in workforce systems, this is a significant change from how we've been trained in the past to do case management. Generally, we solve their problems. Like somebody comes in, I don't have daycare, I don't have transportation, I don't know what training I want to go to. Like where I was often trained, like I'm supposed to solve the problem, dispense advice as though I'm some kind of expert, and direct participants what to do. Sort of like option A, but in a very friendly way. But MI, motivational interviewing, is 180 degrees different. So notice as I go through more examples, which I'll show you, we want to be on the B side. I want you to think about this, is that people are not resistant to change. They are resistant to being changed. They resist someone insisting that they change or telling them how. So that's the A versus the B. Children will resist a parent when you tell them exactly how to do something. A spouse will resist their spouse. Participants will resist a coach. People just don't like being told that they have to change something or how to do it. People change all the time, though. Attitudes change, beliefs change, priorities change. But change is best happens when it is self-directed. So then we got to look at, so why do people change? I mean, Why do people quit smoking? Why do people stop drinking? Why do people quit gambling? Why do they start exercising? Why do people go to college, as examples? And the answer is because they want to. Motivation is key to making change. Notice in my illustration here, I know poorly illustrated, but it's what I can do. What I'm trying to indicate there is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So what I want to do is I want to change that saying that we all know a bit, just to cover motivational interviewing. And Francisco, you're absolutely right. They change because they see the benefits. They see the benefits. And so if I want to change this saying, I'm going to say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you can help the horse become aware of its thirst so it chooses to drink. So, like, no one can force you to quit smoking. No one can make you stop drinking, stop gambling. No one can force you to start exercising. No one can force you to go to school. No one can force you to get a job. All of those things have to come from you. So people can go through the motions without making any commitment, and they will fail unless they fully embrace that motivation to change. And we're the same. I actually think that I mean, people are people. I don't see that I'm any different than the clients. It's just that the things that I want to do in my life are a little different than theirs, but we all face challenges. We all go through these human emotions. So the challenge becomes, as a career coach, as a case manager, is how do we get the client to become aware of their thirst so that they might choose to drink? Before I show you examples of that, I do want to say change is hard. It's hard because it's a grind. It requires that you leave your comfort zone. I mean, if change was easy, it would have already happened, and it would already have been accomplished. But change is hard because when you want to make a change, you don't typically I just wake up one morning and say I'm going to change this. I have to do that day in, day out, day in, day out. Like if I want to start exercising, I can't just make the change if you do it for a couple of days and now I've changed. I have to do it over and over and over for a lifetime. It's a grind. If I choose not to smoke every day, I have to decide I'm not going to smoke. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go to work. Whatever it is, change is hard. And so it requires that people leave their comfort zone. So I want to talk for a moment about that, because then we can pull all these things together, which Francisco is already all over. We live in three levels of comfort. These, I don't think if you look these up, you'd find these, it's the way I define them. One is status quo. Status quo is where, well, you spend like 95, 98% of your day right here. It's just, you go through, you do routines. You have a routine pattern. Routine patterns minimize stress, minimize risk. You're mentally, you're more secure. Like when you get up in the morning, you probably have a routine, what you do first, what you do second, what you do third. You don't change that. You just do that. When you go to work, you go the same way every day. You do things in a very similar way. That's status quo. By the way, it doesn't just because you're in status quo doesn't mean that you're happy. You could be in a relationship that isn't what you dreamed of when you were a child, but there it is. Sometimes we work in jobs that we don't love, but it's a paycheck. Living in your comfort zone is easy because it's routine. We know how to live there. We have security, but it doesn't mean that we're happy. It just means I've learned how to live here. The second zone is the courage to learning zone. And this is where we want our participants to be. This is where you step out and you do things that you haven't tried before. Or maybe you try something that you have done before, but you didn't do very well on the first go around, like getting your GED. Maybe you went to a class before and it didn't work out and you didn't end up getting it. You've applied for jobs before and it didn't work out for you. So this is where you take a risk. And it's possible when you're in the learning or the challenge zone to not be successful at whatever you attempt. It causes some level of fear. But this is also the zone where you see growth. And then the last zone, and we want to keep participants out of this, is the terror, the panic zone. This is where you're so overwhelmed by fear or frustration that you just become paralyzed. And when people hit the terror zone, they generally will retreat back to the comfort zone to find safety. So I was working with a program in North Dakota, and they were sending people to medical training, and people were getting the training. They learn how to live in community college. So going to school became their new status quo. But even though they went to classes, even though they passed, taking the state test was overwhelming for them. That is where terror kicked in and they became paralyzed. So what they wanted to do was avoid taking that test, because if they didn't pass, everything is off the table. It was just too scary. So what we had to work on with that program was, how do we take that test and make it less scary? And I mean, it was nothing magic about it, is making them, have them come in, do practice exams, replicate exactly what is going to happen in the exam, do review courses to just give them more confidence so that they could be in the learning zone, the courage zone, and not the terror. So how do you help a person move from their comfort zone to the challenge zone, the learning zone? When a person, what we're going to do is we're going to ask questions, and we're going to ask a lot of why questions. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go to school? Why do you want to be a truck driver? Why do you want to get your high school diploma? Why do you it's why. Because when a person knows why they want to succeed, when they have a compelling reason, then you as a career coach will be a lot more successful working on the how to get there. In our world, the how is oftentimes the IEP or the ISS. It's the steps that someone would take in order to get wherever it is they want to go, like signing up for a GED, learning English, updating their resume, or applying for school. And if you don't know why you want to go to school, if you don't know why, and you don't have this strong purpose, then all the how and all the strategies in the world are not going to help you. So that's why it's critical to spend time with participants drilling down the why. Because if you skip the why, is I think we're going to talk about this in one of the future webinars, not today. But if you don't have the why, then when you need to go back and re-engage people because their motivation is slipping, then you're going to have difficulty because you don't have the information that you need to regenerate that motivation. So motivation for change occurs when there's a discrepancy between their current situation and their desired future. So as an example, I want to live independently, but right now I'm stuck living with my parents. Or, maybe it's that I'm working part-time, and while I like my job and everything, I'm just not making enough money in order to be able to do the things that I need to do. So that's where there's a discrepancy between where I'm at right now and where I see that I want to be. So what I have to do as a career coach, as a case manager, is help them to identify that's the why. Is like, Why? What do they visualize? Where is it that they want to be? People will make a change, or more likely to make a change, when they have a very clear vision of where they want to be. So that's why I think setting life goals, or even some programs do something called vision boards with participants. That's why I think that that's so important. When I can see where I want to be and it seems achievable, then I'm unhappy with status quo and more likely to move to that learning or challenge zone. The status quo is no longer comfortable for me because I see something that is better. So, if people cannot see a better place, if they cannot see the benefits, if they can't see how it's going to help them, then motivation is going to wane. Goals always precede action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example. In fact, we'll do two. I'm going to show you one, and then I'm going to ask you one. Mine is I chose a private sector example because what I want to show you is Jenny Craig. Jenny Craig is a company that tries to help their customers make behavior changes, make lifestyle changes. And I think we can learn a lot by studying behavior. Those private sector companies that have been successful trying to get people to make behavior changes. So think about what you have to do. I've been on Jenny, so I'm very familiar. But if you think about what you have to do to be successful in that program, there's a box. What you have to do, you have to make a meal plan once a week. You have to set a personal appointment once a week to go pick up, buy food, plan a menu. You have to weigh in weekly with the staff member. You have to keep a weight loss diary that includes everything that you put in your mouth, including water. If, like, when you drink something, if it goes in your mouth, you write it down. And you have to increase exercise and movement and log all that too. So the question is, like, if you step back and think, do those steps motivate people? And what I would say is, no, they don't at all. What motivates people is the why. Why would you want to join that program? Because you're going to feel better, because maybe you want to fit in your current wardrobe, like you've outgrown your current wardrobe and you don't want to go buy all new clothes. Maybe you want to look better for some event. Maybe you're going to see, like, I don't know, I'm getting ready to go to my high school reunion, and it's like to see some old boyfriend and let him go, like, oh, look, here's what you missed. And so you want to look your best. You want to be able to keep up with your grandkids, be able to go out, play ball, I don't know, run around the yard, do things with them. You want to fit in a certain outfit. Maybe you want to improve your health. What I want you to see is that the reason that people join Jenny is because they already know their why. They know why they want to do it. And then what they've got to do, what Jenny does is helps them figure out how to do it. So an effective coach would ask them about their why. It's because the why is going to keep them coming. And so I know, like, when I first went years ago, I went to Jenny, and the counselor immediately asked me, like, oh, why are you here? What's your reason? And I thought, wow, she's so effective. And I said, because I'm not only going to my high school reunion, I was in charge of it. And I said, I'm going to stand up and I make all the announcements and everything. And when I was in high school, I was not popular at all. In fact, I was a new student. So I didn't really have any friends. I just went through high school. I always felt sort of isolated. And this was like sort of my big, like, hey, I was in your class. And so every single time that I went in for my weekly appointments, every single time she would ask me, she's like, oh, so have you thought about what you're going to wear to the reunion? Oh, what kind of response are you getting? Are you going to see anybody at the reunion that you haven't seen since high school? She kept me totally focused on my goal, which was the reunion. So, and then even when I don't know, I was 4 months into it or something, I'd lost weight because it's effective. If you eat that, you're definitely going to lose weight. But I just quit. I just didn't want to go anymore. And whenever I quit, I just didn't show up. I no showed for an appointment, something your clients would never do to you. I hope she wouldn't notice that I wasn't there for my one on one personalized preset appointment. Within 20 minutes, my phone was ringing. I wasn't even thinking about it. And that's before cell phones and answering things. I just answered the phone. Kelly residence, Jody speaking. And she said, "Yeah, Jody, this is Marilyn down at Jenny." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Jenny, or Marilyn. Oh, I totally forgot I had an appointment." I'm telling you, I was lying and I'm not a liar, but I just was so embarrassed about missing the appointment. And I told her, I said, "I just got to let you know, though, I think I'm not interested anymore. I don't know. I think I'm done with this." And she said, like she went, and I thought like she was choking, like maybe she ate a peanut or something. It's caught in her throat. I'm like, "Marilyn, Marilyn, like I just need her to say something." And I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she's like, she goes, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." Then I think like, what is going on there that I can't see? She goes, "Oh my gosh." I go, "What?" And she goes, "Did they cancel your high school reunion?" Which took me right back to why I'm doing this. And we started talking about the reunion again. And I have to tell you, she talked me into, she's like, "You've come so far, to be where you want to be. What's going to happen if you stop coming now? Like, how are you going to feel when you're at the reunion and you came this far and you could have gone further?" And she talked me into, I went like a few more weeks, and what they're interested in is selling you food. So she won. So anyway, the point is there has to be something. Here's what I'm going to ask you, and you can just quick, I'll let you use chat, or you can unmute yourself. Why did you go to college and earn a degree? What was it that you wanted? You didn't, I mean, some people maybe went to school just to go. But I think most of us had a reason. And what was your reason? Because Ronnie's saying it was expected. So you were going to college to please other people who've set this as a goal for you. I was expected, and it allowed me to achieve my goals. Felicia says she went because she wanted to set an example for her kids, which that says if you go to college, what that's saying to your kids, if you have kids at that point is, or even if you don't later in life, is education is important. William says because he wanted to play basketball and he wanted to get a degree at the same time, but I'm thinking the basketball was more important at that point. Somebody just said, if I could scroll back, that they were going to be the first person to graduate in their family. And now I scrolled back too far. And so I can't find it. Anyway, and that was me. I was the first child on either side of my uh, parents, either side, any of my cousins, to actually go to school. Didn't know what I wanted to do, Rachel says, but I thought it at least helped me get started taking steps toward my future. I wanted to set an example for my nephews. I don't know about you guys, I wanted to go to college because I assumed, and it did work out that way, that if I had a degree, I would make more money than if I didn't have a degree. I wanted, like, all my cousins, anybody who did work like at a grocery store as a cashier or a bank teller. I wanted something more than that. I wanted something to be challenged. And Renee, perfect. I was 45 and I wanted to show my kids, it's never too late to get an education. And then Nellie is saying it's important and help to get a better job. So what I want you to see, though, is within this is that's a 4-year commitment. And so we were all seeking something. And that we had there was something out there that we were working toward, because there has to be something. You have to have goals. And what I want you to see is that it is really important when we are initially working with a participant to identify what is their reason for doing this. Oftentimes that's not written that way on an intake form or on an application, but I think we've got to ask it. So this might be a way, one example. I want to start by asking you some questions to help me understand what sorts of things you're interested in and how this program might be able to support you in achieving your goals. Does that sound like a good place to start? And notice even within the way in which I've worded that, the participant is in charge. So I say, is that a good place to start? I can tell you, I have never had a participant ever who says, no, that's not where I want to start. Like, but I want you to see just in the way I ask the question, it puts them in control. So that's how I might script like this initial conversation. So then I'm going to show you some general questions that I think could lead to the why. And you wouldn't ask all of these. You don't have to ask any of these. I mean, you have to ask what is like sounds like you, and these will all sound like me. But what kind of life do you eventually want for yourself and or your family and or your kids? If you imagined yourself succeeding, how might your life be improved? What would be different? What would be better for you? What would be easier? So again, you get them to dream, to see themselves, because when there is again a discrepancy between where they want to be and where they're at right now, that's what helps people move to that learning zone, that challenge zone more. You'll be tired of all my questions. What do you like and dislike about your current situation? And so get them to talk about that. And with the youth I serve, they hated living with their parents, even though they liked that they didn't have to pay rent, buy groceries, pay utilities. They just wanted the independence. And so they had that as a picture. That's a question. Here's another one. If you were successful in getting your education, a job, what would be different for you? Or what would be the best thing that might happen to you if you went to school or you got a job? And one other way to phrase it is, how would you like things to be different, in your life? So those are just general questions. But and I think I talked about this in the training, but I might not have talked about it in both. One of the things that I think is a good idea, this is just me, as I was learning how to move from motivational interviewing. Before that, honestly, I was very empathetic. I was a big helper, but I was a doer. I take charge of other people's problems. I solve them for them, and then I hand them back. And like when I learned about motivational interviewing, it's like, oh, that's totally the wrong approach. But I had to break my own bad habits. And so one of the things that I found that was really helpful for me, like this worksheet, is to pre-populate, already have some questions ready to go so that I have them like as a desk aid that I can pull out when I'm talking to a participant, because I can tell you that coming up with questions on the spot when somebody's sitting right there, at least for me, was difficult. Because what you'll also notice, and we'll go into this in a future session, probably the next session, is all of these are open-ended questions. None of them are closed. None of them can be answered with yes, no, or like your birth date, your address, or something like that, which is a closed questions. All of these are open and make you think. So I suggest like having lots of questions. And so here are some questions. So those were general. These are questions that are about giving. So say that somebody has kids, or they're a dislocated worker, and you know that they're supporting the family. I might want a different set. And so here, you said that you want to make a better life for yourself and your family. Let's talk a little bit about what represents a better life for you. So get them to talk about that. Tell me what parts of your family life you're wanting to improve. What would that look like? Or what would you need to do in order to create a better life for them? Or what steps are you ready to take right now to begin building the foundation of this better life? Or how might it help if I not only work with you, but also worked with your children in order to build this better life. And what I was thinking when I wrote that is if they have teenagers and I could get, if the person's eligible for adult program, can I get the youth, their children into a youth program? Would that help the situation? And then the last set, I think is the last set that I'm going to give you, just to give you examples that for different programs, for different populations, I can have a different set of questions. You indicated that you don't have a high school diploma and want to earn one. How would that benefit you and your family? Or if you were successful getting your GED, how would that help you financially? What advantages do you think earning your high school diploma would get you? Why do you see this as important to your future? And what would you like to do in the next 3 months that moves you closer to earning your high school equivalency diploma? I'll just give you this example. I had a youth who was in my program. His name, I'm going to call him Stan because that was his name, and it just sort of makes the story flow better for me. So Stan's in my program, and he had left school prior to graduation because that's exclusively who I work with. And so several years after leaving school without his diploma, he came back in and he said he wanted to get his GED. And I asked him why he wanted to get it. And what he told me was that he wanted to get his diploma because he wanted to go walk across the stage at a graduation ceremony because he wanted to give that gift to his grandmother. His grandmother raised him. His mother and father were dysfunctional and kind of out of the picture. And he knew that that was important to his grandmother. So he wanted to give her that gift. And he also told me that if he had a GED, he could probably get better jobs. But the thing is that his grandmother was his major motivator, and I used it all the time. So when he seemed less interested in working on his GED and more interested when he was in the program, we had a small program, so everybody did everything. He seemed more interested in socializing than doing the lessons. I would bring him in and I'd talk to him and say, how's your grandmother? I know how important this was. How many hours per week are you willing to invest in giving your grandmother this gift of watching you walk across the stage? Just like my reunion, you have to keep their goal right in front of them. So talk about the grandmother. So anyway, so I've given you some examples of open-ended questions. The reason we want to ask them is because people have to know why. They have to have this vision, because what we're trying to do is move them out of status quo into learning challenge zone. So, but I want to add another layer. And my next layer is why, if people want to do a thing, and you can use chat to respond to this. If you want to do a thing, start an exercise program, quit smoking, get 8 hours of sleep a night, good hours of sleep a night, go back to school, finish a degree, get your master's, your doctorate, cut sugar out of your diet entirely. Or one of those things I asked you before, think about something that you want to change about yourself. I want you to list in chat, if you're not doing those things already, then what are some of the reasons that you're not doing it? Why, if you want to start an exercise program, why haven't you already started that? If you wanted to quit smoking, why didn't you quit smoking? Why isn't that already in process? Because there can be things that you want to do in your life, but you haven't really thought through or aren't willing to make the changes necessary to achieve those. So at least write down one reason in chat that you're not making a change that you've thought about, that you wish you were making. So think of one reason, or unmute. I don't have time. Exercise, I just don't have time for it. I already have a full-time job. I got kids. They already get up early. That would be a reason. So being very honest and saying I'm lazy. Should isn't always enough to motivate, and there are not enough hours in the day. Funding money. A lot of these things do cost money, like going back to school. I'm just tired after work. Once I blew it for the day, it's just like I can only do one thing per day, and that's like work. I'd like to exercise. I just don't have time. Something just always comes up and like derails me. Just Joanna is honest. I just have no motivation to do it. So what I want to do is we're gonna sidestep that. It's some things just feel too big to start. Yeah, you're right. It's like because when you're gonna make this change, like that change, like I said, it's a grind. You have to do it every day. It's not a thing like I make a decision and like 2 days later it's done. Not enough hours. Again, back to the lazy. Let's sidestep that for 1 second, and then I'm going to come back to it. But we have reasons that people aren't doing it. I want to show you that there are three components that have to be in place in order for a person to make a change. And so setting a goal is the first step. You have to have something out there that you want. I want to go to my reunion. I want to make a better life for my kids. I want them to see that education is important. I want to get my college degree because it's going to help me make more money. That's the first step. But that doesn't mean the person's ready to take the next step, which is action. So motivational interviewing says that people have to be ready to change. They have to be committed to it. So just like when you go to a doctor, just even for like a regular physical, they take your vital signs. And at a doctor's office, your vital signs are blood pressure, temperature, and pulse. They take those three things. Well, in as a career coach, the vital signs that we should be testing for with our participants are: do they have the confidence that they can do this? Is this the right time for them in the right way? And is this important to them? Is this a priority? So to motivate people to change, they have to believe that the change is important. And we can begin that whole process at orientation, at assessment. They have to have confidence that they can achieve the goal. If somebody doesn't have confidence that they can achieve the goal, they won't even start. So if my youth doesn't believe they could actually ever earn their GED or their high school diploma, they're not going to start. And the timing has to be correct. If the participant is dealing with other things that preclude them from changing right now, a sick child and dying parent, then the timing isn't right. So what I've done is I'm trying to simplify this. And so instead of saying confidence, importance, and the timing being right, it's: are you ready? Are you willing? Are you able to do this? So you have to be ready, willing, and able. And here is the kick in the pants: all three of these things have to be present simultaneously. So if someone is high in confidence, I know that I could get my license. I know I could get a job, but it's low in importance. I just don't want to. I know I could do it. I just don't want to. Then they're not going to do it. And what I've got to do with them is focus on the importance. Why is this important? Through the questions that I ask, like what would be some pros of earning your GED, getting your college degree, getting a job. If they are, let's say, they're very high in confidence and they actually think it's really important, but right now they're not ready because they have an upcoming, I'm just making something up, they have an upcoming foot surgery. And so they've got to get past that before they're ready to start school or do something. Then it's they're able, they're willing, they're not ready. And so it's not going to work. So if I go back then to why you guys don't do these things when you know you should, if you scroll back and you look at all of the answers that people gave, all of the answers, the reasons that you're not doing, I mean, I can call them the reasons that you're not doing it, but we can also call them excuses, is that it's either you're not ready, you're not willing, you're not able, it's not important to you. Where somebody says, several of you said, I just am lazy. Or by the time I get home from work, I just don't feel like doing it. I want to point out, if it was important to you, if it was a priority, you can find the time. The real issue is it's not a priority. It's not important. Or it could be like for me, cutting all sugar out of my diet. That's impossible. I just don't have confidence I could ever do it. Why? Because my husband is a sugarholic. He has to have candy every single night, ice cream, not only just ice cream, he has to put chocolate on top of it. He always is buying chocolate chip cookies, bringing home stuff. He'll go to a bakery. And I could say no, no, no. And a lot of times I do, but I cannot reject it all the time. And so even when he buys cereal that has sugar on it. So if I feel like I want some cereal this morning, it's going to have sugar. I don't think I could cut sugar out of my diet. So I'm not confident that I could do it. So, why don't we do these? It's a matter of ready, willing, or able. So, anyway, all three of those things have to be in place. So, what we want to do is I need to assess, and I am going to give you questions for how it is that some assessment questions. But before I do that, I'm going to go off and recognize that what I want to do with my participants is I want to get them to talk about change. Your husband is also, oh, and your husband's a diabetic. Oh, and needs to have sugar. I thought that diabetics weren't supposed to have sugar. He probably waits. If it was my husband, he'd wait until his sugar dropped so he has an excuse for doing it. Anyway, what we want to do is, what we want to do as career coaches, as case managers, is one of our goals is to elicit change talk. What we want to do again is provide the opportunity for customers to talk themselves into changing. And so, why is it important? Because the participants' language matters. Research shows that the more the your participant talks about change, the more likely they are to make it. So what the customer is saying reflects how they're thinking about it, and how they're thinking about it influences like whether or not they'll move forward. So this circles back to that statement that I made at the very beginning that says, when I hear myself talk, I know what I believe. So when a customer gives voice to making a change, it makes them more likely to make it. So what we want to do is increase the frequency of change talk. The more you get somebody to talk about starting an exercise program, quitting smoking, going on a diet, taking classes, more likely they are to do it. So, and we want them to argue for it. So, as people think about and process change, they will make change talk. So, like oftentimes people talk about things that they're thinking about changing. So change can happen spontaneously. Like I've been thinking about going I've been thinking well, I guess that's not spontaneous. It's spontaneous to us. We're sitting there and, I'm talking to the person. I said, like, what brings you in here? What is it that you're thinking, you're hoping that we can provide? And they're saying, well, I'm thinking about going to school. It's spontaneous, not for the participants, but it's spontaneous for me because I'm not the one who generated that change talk. Hopefully that made sense. Or what I can do is I can ask a question. Have you considered going to school or some type of training? What are your thoughts on that? And so that is me generating the change talk. So when a participant expresses their support for a change, again, they're more likely to make it. So again, getting them to talk to help a person to move forward, we need to give them a chance to talk about their ambivalence, the pros and cons of doing a thing. And to reinforce change talk on, hopefully, depending on what they're talking about, hopefully on the pro. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to reinforce. I'm going to use some of the skills that we'll be looking at, like reflective listening. So one of our goals is to elicit it. So let's and then, but what we have to do in addition to eliciting it is to know what it sounds like when they make it. So, how will you know when you hear it? Change talk is a statement that the person makes that reveals their consideration of, their motivation for action that they're willing to take or a commitment to change. So, I've given you a bunch of examples of what it sounds like. Um, how will you know when you hear it? It's really any self-expressed uh, statement that reveals they're considering making a change. I want to get my diploma. That is reveals that they're considering making a change. They could say something like, I think I could learn English, like if I put my mind to it. That is thinking about it. If I work on a certificate, I would really feel better about myself and my skills. Maybe somebody says, I don't want to move anymore. And where I was going with that, because you could say, what's that have to do with work? I mean, some people are renters and they move from one place to another, to another, to another. And they just don't want to move. They want something that is more stable. And what they know is that getting a job gives them the stability to be able to be more permanent. And so that is change talk. Unemployment isn't enough. I just have to get a job. That's change talk. Or we're here to, oh, I'm sorry, that's for us as a staff person. We're here to serve the participant. So I can really embrace this idea. That's change talk. So they, when people are talking about the advantage, my kids would be better off. I'd have more money. I get paid where what I'm worth. Or they describe an action. I've already started working on my resume. I've been looking at want ads on Indeed.com or whatever. That's change talk. Or it's just I'm saying I will attend training. So that's change talk. But then there's another kind of talk that is sustained talk. Sustained talk is the opposite of change talk. Sustained talk is where they're making arguments for not changing, for just sustaining the status quo. Back to that, how people change, status quo learning, or it could be that they get into the panic zone, their comfort zones. Sorry. So examples of sustained talk. I don't need to get a GED. I don't need that. I've gotten jobs before without getting my GED. I don't need that now. I've tried, and I don't even think I could pass the state exam. That's sustained talk. I've gotten by just fine so far without knowing English. So that's not a problem. I can't get a job right now. I need to take care of my mother. That's sustained talk. I'm fine on unemployment. In fact, I want to run it out to the end. I just don't want to work right now. Right now, I got money coming in and I'm making it. I just don't want to work. Or I don't see how this is going to help me. All of those are examples of sustained talk. So what they're doing is they're voicing arguments for why they cannot possibly change. What we're listening for as a career coach, as I'm asking these questions, where do you see, how would your life be different? What might be some advantages? Have you thought about going to school? When you think about getting a job, what comes to mind? Talk to me a little bit about prior school experiences and whether or not that's something you'd like to do again. What I'm listening for, you have to have that third ear, is are they making change talk in their answer? Or are they making sustained talk? Sustained talk, I'm like comfortable right where I'm at. If they're making change talks, when we start talking about the skills that you use, I'll show you exactly what you do with it. But for right now, let's see whether or not you can distinguish. And so I've given you 5 statements, quick review. If it favors change, it's change talk. It's sustained talk. If it's, I just want to stay the same. Which of these, let's do it this way. Which of these are, well, okay. What I'll have you do is just write it down like S. You don't have to write A, B, C, D, just like write SC. I'm making that up because I'm not even reading what it is. SCC, SC. Read those and figure out, is it sustain or is it change? And you can put it in chat or you can just write it on a sheet of paper. Yep, and I am seeing answers and I'm scrolling through them quick as they pop up. And I think I must have done just an excellent job on the concept because so far everybody has gotten it right until I just saw one that did not. Okay, I think on the next one, I almost everybody, everybody but one I saw got it right. Sustained talk is red. This is just how I am. I can't change, and I haven't needed a GED. It's just not worth the effort. Those are sustained talk and I want more energy. So I want to get more sleep. I tend to yell a lot and I know I need to stop doing that. Or sometimes I just make stupid financial decisions. I know that that's something that's got to change. That's change talk. So I guess, as a part of what I'm hoping that you get out of this is I need to ask questions to get people to talk about change, hope and their goals and how they feel about it. Then I have to listen for it, and then one of the things that I've got to do is I also have to evoke it, and so you've got to be able to evoke it. I got to be able to hear it, understand the difference so that I know what to do with it. So how do you if we can identify it, like what are the ways, what's the way that we're going to evoke it? Anybody have an idea? Again, you can unmute. You don't have to stay muted the whole time. Or you can use your, I don't know what time it is. Oh, 28. I'm going to move quickly. I just saw what my clock watch right here. It's dead. I thought it was on, but it's not, so I can't. How do you evoke change talk? This is something we're going to talk about a lot in the next session. You use open-ended questions. Yeah. Ask questions, encourage them to ask, to answer your question. So to uncover their motivators, to evoke change talk, you're going to use open-ended questions. You're going to listen to them, listen to their answer. Don't defend. Again, we'll go over that. Defense, when we get defensive, we create resistance. Just be curious. We want to learn about what problem they're trying to solve, what specific changes they think that would make it easier. And so, what kind of changes do we as the organization need to make in order to make this work? What gets in their way or our way of making a change? And so, what we're trying to do is get at why. And so I know we're wrapping this up because I'm at the last minute, but this back to the beginning, and next time we'll deal with skills. The spirit of motivation, it's collaborative between the case manager and the participant. It evokes or draws out their ideas about change. I never impose mine. We're always practicing compassion, acceptance, partnership. It's them, and we emphasize their autonomy, that decision making is always there. Decision making resides in the individual. So that kind of summarizes what motivational interviewing is about. And so again, next time, the next 3 times, we're going to be looking at skills, and you can tell that, yeah, I will have you participate as much as I can. After this, quickly, I am going to send out a homework exercise to everyone who's here. It is merely a way for you to test your own understanding, or comprehension. So I'll give you examples. It will not have to do with whether or not you get certified or don't get certified. But if you are trying to teach someone else this very skill, because this is train the trainer, you might find taking the quiz to be effective and helpful, and something that you could also use with people who you're trying to teach. So I will open it up. I know that I'm at time, so I'm exactly at 3:30. If somebody has questions, I'll answer them. But if you need to hop off because you really only scheduled yourself for the hour and a half, that's fine too. Totally understand. Oh, is there a difference between sustained talk and making excuses? Not really. Basically, sustained talk and making excuses are similar, because it's all the reasons I can't do this right now and I don't want to, or it's just impossible for me to make that change right now. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that we're not going to probe and to help. The problem is when somebody wants to sustain or they're making excuses, it either isn't important to them, the time is not right, or they don't have confidence that they're going to be able to make the change if it's something that is, well, it's not important. So I have to ask questions, which you'll see when we're talking about open-ended. I have some that are specifically about priority, specifically about timing, and specifically about their confidence. And so just because somebody wants to sustain doesn't mean I don't ask them stuff. Okay. And see, changing someone's, back to here, back to the end, make sure I don't see any other questions. Thank you. Okay, so I will see you again in 2 weeks from today. It was good. Thank you, Tiffany, for having your camera on. You were the top one up. And so I watched you in order to see whether or not, like, I was bogging down, or whether or not we were moving forward. For whatever reason, you were the person who showed on my screen. So I'll see you guys. Have a great rest of the week, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.